Our final section I'd like to discuss, and it's a topic that I've studied and am very engaged in as well, which is the experience of Muslim Americans post 9/11. Clearly, Abdullah, this was a huge shock, and to all Americans, but I think especially to Muslim Americans, and wondering how this was going to impact their lives. The fact that people in the name of Islam and practicing Muslims did this atrocity, the attacks of 9/11. How can you describe what the experience has been like for the Muslim American trying to deal with this trauma over the last years?
You're absolutely right that neither American society in general nor American Muslims in particular were ready for this crisis. I don't know if anybody could be ready for this. We caught complete unprepared. American society at large, knowing very little about Islam, very little to none. For the first time in such a major way, they found out about this world religion through the evil, destructive legacy of the 9/11 and things after that. Everything they heard about Islam has been through the 9/11, this barbaric terrorist act on our soil, and the events followed 9/11. And the Muslims in the United States, 6 to 8 million for overwhelmingly upright citizens, as they were chasing their American dreams in many different forms and shapes, they never thought their identities, their religion, their theology, their names, their history, their country of origin, where they themselves or parents came from, will be at the center of attention, in front of the spotlights, in front of subject to interrogation, suspicion, distrust in such a major and large scale. We weren't prepared for this. So for the most part, the initial reaction has been shock, dismay, disappointment, a shattering of American dreams that they've been following in such a troubling way. Because they came to this country for better education, for better lives for themselves and for their loved ones. The last thing they thought they were going to be was, wherever they are, to explain and apologize for things that some other Muslims have done in the United States or some other parts of the Muslim world. So for the most part, Muslims have been caught like deers in front of the headlights. And that still continues to be. As per what happened in Boston, the Boston terrorist, marathon terrorist event, that was painful to see that still is the case, partially. After all these years, after all these things that we've been trying to respond as American Muslim community, there is still some sort of a shock, dismay, embarrassment, not knowing what to do. And between apology and explanation and also sense of security that they feel, Muslim community has been going through, it hasn't been a very pleasant experience for many Muslims to live in a post-9/11 United States, to say the least.
Well, describe some of the discrimination that you feel that Muslim Americans are experiencing. Not to compare the two, but of course, after during World War II, we had a very terrible reaction against the Japanese Americans being placed in internment camps. I don't want to congratulate America for not doing that with respect to Muslims, but in some ways, and the reaction of President Bush, I think, was very good in the immediate days after 9/11, and going out of his way to say that this is Muslims are patriotic Americans, and that no violence or retribution against Muslims was going to be tolerated. So, the official response to 9/11 was nowhere near what happened in World War II. Nonetheless, there has been discrimination, both private and governmental. Try to explain that.
Absolutely. Thank God things have not gotten as bad as what happened to Japanese Americans or Asian Americans. But there were invitations, there were calls from very high public officials and politicians. Some congresswomen from North Carolina and others, they were basically at least entertaining the idea of discussing the possibility of a similar reaction if there will be another 9/11, if there will be continuation of terrorist acts against Americans, especially here in the United States, etc. But thank God this society clearly learned its lessons from its past, and it's still healthy at its core, that the reactions have been measured so far. But since 9/11, especially immediately after 9/11, so many American Muslim citizens, American citizens, those who are Muslim, have been subjected to official interrogation, detention. Some of them basically put on no-fly zone, which made their life completely miserable. It affected their business, it affected their life. The famous Sami al-Aryan case, even though, again, the numbers are not very big in the official discrimination sense, but it was enough for America, for all, I think, American Muslim community to question their place in the society, question their ability to be as American as an apple pie, to be fully American citizens, equal American citizens like others. I don't know if you want me to give the statistics. Just go to various human rights organizations or the ACLU cases defending Muslims who are subjected to discrimination in the workplace, discrimination in the public life, the civic life, etc.
I'm sure you've heard this discussion many times, because I have many times. You go and you speak at a non-Muslim audience about 9/11, about terrorism, and the non-Muslim audience will say, why haven't the moderate Muslims come out and denounced terrorism? Why don't they? And then you go to talk to a group of Muslims, and they say, all we do is denounce terrorism until we're blue in the face. Why isn't anyone listening to us? I'm sure you've experienced this phenomenon.
Yes.
What's going on? Why are the two sides not communicating or able to hear each other's message very well?
Well, if you figure this out, if you know the answer of this why question, you will do such a huge service to America, and especially American Muslim community. I used to feel extremely frustrated when I hear this call, like, where are the moderate Muslims? Why are they not speaking against? Because as someone who is part of the American Muslim community and know the American Muslim community quite well, working with various local national organizations, that's all what we do. That's all what we spend our energy, time, money, focus, and attention since 9/11. I used to just want to just pull my hair and scream if one more person will say, like, where are the moderate Muslims? But I grew to understand that there's a major problem here, the inevitable challenge and crisis. Unfortunately, our voice, our message, the mainstream Islam and Muslims message is not heard by the larger American Muslim community. And it's not entirely their fault.
You mean the larger non-Muslim?
Non-Muslim American, I'm sorry. Larger American society at large. Our message doesn't come across. This has a lot to do with where American Muslim community is. Even though 6 to 8 million American Muslim society, in their reality, they are very, very successful. Their income rate average, their education average, their integration level compared to other similar immigrant communities, we are a successful bunch. But when our perception is so far from our reality, we don't know how to bridge that gap. We don't necessarily, still the American Muslim community is not as American as an apple pie, in the sense that they have not established themselves as like Catholic Americans and Jewish Americans. Their presence in the American media, American educational system, the American civic society is not there, unfortunately. This is inevitable. This is nobody's fault that they are not able to communicate their message to the larger audience, their fellow Americans, as successful as they should. There is this very encouraging developments and progress in that regard, but we have a long way to go.